In a dry and forgotten corner of Earth, where the sand never stopped moving, and no one came by accident, Rick sat alone. His small cabin stood between broken rocks and a dead radio tower. Once this place had watched the stars for signals. Now it watched nothing. Rick wasn't just any man. He had fought in 3 border wars, led covert missions in deep space, and lost everyone he had ever trusted. Now he didn't fight. He just listened. To the wind, the crackling of old machines, and the silence that had become too perfect. Then something strange happened. At 3:47 a.m., a red light blinked on the long-dead console. It wasn't supposed to blink. The whole system was disconnected from satellites when the world powers shut down the global defense net 5 years ago. But the red light blinked again. It wasn't a glitch. Rick got up without a word, walked to the screen, and powered up the dusty panel. Static, then a flicker, then a code, classified signal, 117B. It's starting. That's all it said. No location, no timestamp, just 3 words. Rick stared at it, heart slowing down rather than speeding up. He remembered those words. They were part of an emergency plan made in case Earth was attacked by an unknown force, a plan no one believed would ever be needed. Rick grabbed his gear without hesitation. He didn't call anyone. There was no one left to call. Most soldiers were retired, scattered, or dead. The Defense Council was gone. Peace had made the world sleepy. But Rick wasn't sleepy. He had trained his whole life for something no one wanted to believe in. He got into his sand cruiser, a machine more rust than metal, and drove toward the closest decommissioned observation point, Silo Theta, deep in the mountains. If there was any backup data or clues, it would be there. Halfway through the valley, the sky flickered. Not lightning, not stars. It looked like a tear in the sky, a thin line of white light stretching across the clouds, then vanishing. Rick stopped the vehicle. He stepped out, listened, watched. There was no sound, no birds, no insects, no wind. He pulled out a handheld tracker, tuned to any magnetic disruptions. The needle swung wildly. Whatever had happened in the sky had shaken the planet's skin. Then, from behind the hills, he saw a glow, a soft, unnatural blue. Rick left the vehicle behind and climbed quietly. At the top, his breath caught. Below, where the old city of Durian had once stood, there was nothing. Just black glass. The entire city had been melted into the ground like someone had pressed a giant heat beam from space. No alarms, no evacuation signs. Just gone. His hands tightened around the binoculars. Through the glass he saw something move at the center, a shape, tall, slender, metallic but flowing like water. It stood still, as if it knew he was watching. Rick backed down slowly, heart now hammering in silence. This was not war. This was something else. No gunfire, no warnings, just quiet erasure. He returned to the cruiser, mind racing. If Durian was gone, others might be next. He needed to warn someone, anyone. He drove to an old relay bunker buried in the mountains. It was supposed to be off-grid, useless. But Rick had spent years installing a personal backup power cell just in case. Inside, the darkness was thick. He turned on the lights. Dust fell from the ceiling like ash. He powered up the console, typed in a hardwired address. Dr. Elia Tran, Shadow Node 9. She was the only one who might believe him. Elia had been laughed out of every science council after claiming alien forces were already here, quietly studying Earth. She had disappeared. After the last debate turned violent, most thought she was insane. Rick didn't. The screen blinked, then a connection. Her face appeared, older, thinner, tired, but sharp as ever. She didn't look surprised. "You saw it too, didn't you?" she said softly. Rick nodded. "Durian is gone." She didn't blink. "It's started. We don't have much time." "Tell me where you are," Rick said. "I'm coming." She hesitated, then sent coordinates. As the signal ended, the bunker lights flickered again. Rick looked up. For the first time in years, he was afraid. Outside, far in the sky, another line of white lights sliced the clouds. Dr. Elia Tran hadn't slept in 2 days. She sat in a dark underground lab hidden inside an old mining facility. Dust hung in the air like fog, and the walls were lined with broken equipment, old satellite parts, and pages of her research, papers no one had ever read. Years ago, Elia had warned the world about strange energy signals rising from the Earth's surface. She said it wasn't natural. She said someone, or something, was mapping the planet from inside its skin. But the Global Science Board called her paranoid. News channels mocked her. She lost her position, her funding, and her name. Still, she didn't stop. Now the signals were back, but stronger, sharper, and faster. Elia stood over her main console, watching a map of the Earth glow with red dots. Each dot marked a location where the magnetic fields had bent in unnatural ways. The pattern was spreading like a disease. She touched the screen, zooming in on the latest one. Durian. The city had just vanished. Then her computer beeped. A direct signal was coming in. Her eyes widened. The sender's ID read, Rick Callan, code 117B. She hadn't heard that name in years. Rick had been a soldier in a top black ops unit, a ghost. Rumors said he had vanished after the border wars, some claiming he had died. Others said he had seen too much. Elia knew only one thing. Rick didn't send messages unless it meant the world was breaking. She accepted the call. Rick's face appeared, harder than she remembered. Eyes cold, voice steady. "Durian is gone," he said. Elia nodded slowly. "I know. I tracked it. It's happening faster than I expected." "We need to talk," Rick said. "In person." She hesitated. Trust was hard to give. But there was no time left. She sent her location. Then she turned to her machine, pulled out a glowing chip, and placed it in a metal case. That chip held something special, proof of her theory, and maybe a way to stop what was coming. 2 hours later, the sound of a cruiser echoed in the canyon above. Elia grabbed her coat and climbed to the surface. Dust blew across the dry rocks. She spotted Rick stepping out of the vehicle. They stared at each other for a moment. No smiles, just recognition. "You still believe they're watching us?" he asked. "I don't believe," she replied. "I know." They entered the lab. Rick's eyes scanned the space. Old tech, messy notes, humming machines. It looked like madness, but it felt like truth. Elia placed the chip on the table. "This was recorded 3 nights ago. It's not from Earth." Rick leaned closer. A pulse played through the speakers, low, rhythmic, strange. Then a voice. Not human, not robotic. Something in between. It repeated a pattern over and over. It's a map, Elia said. They're not just here. They've been marking points, cities, rivers, mountains, and they're using our planet like a memory drive. Rick frowned. Why would they do that? To rewrite it, Elia said. They're bending time and space, not with weapons, with data. She pointed to a large screen showing waves of color over a black background. This is Earth's magnetic field. These curves are normal, but these, she tapped a red arc. These are alien. They're folding parts of Earth into a pattern. When the pattern completes, nothing will be human anymore. Not the land, not the air, not us. Rick stayed silent. Then he asked, "What do we do?" Elia picked up a second case. Inside was a small, hand-built device, glowing blue. I call it a sync key. It can break the signal, temporarily. But I need to get closer to the source. You mean the alien core I saw at Durian? Rick asked. Her eyes widened. You saw it? Rick nodded. Metal, tall, like it was standing on water. That's the anchor point, she whispered. That's where the rewriting begins. Suddenly, the lab lights flickered. A loud hum vibrated through the walls. Rick reached for his weapon. Elia grabbed the sync key. Outside, a strange light glowed in the sky. They found us, she said. No, Rick corrected. They've been watching. Now they're acting. He opened the door. A floating object hovered over the canyon, sleek, silver, and pulsing. It wasn't flying. It was scanning. Rick aimed his rifle. Elia grabbed his arm. Don't shoot. It's mapping us. It's not ready to fight yet. We can't stay, Rick said. It's too late. They ran to the cruiser, engine already hot. Dust kicked up behind them as the machine sped through narrow valleys. The scanner didn't follow. It just watched, like it was learning. Inside the vehicle, Rick turned to Elia. You were right, he said. I wish I wasn't, she replied, and far above, in a sky too quiet, another line of light began to form. The road twisted through dead valleys and broken hills. Rick drove fast, his hand steady on the wheel. Beside him, Elia stared at the small device in her hand, the sync key. It hummed softly, glowing blue. It was their only hope, and it wasn't ready yet. They hadn't spoken much since escaping the canyon. The silence between them was thick, filled with doubt and old wounds. You still hate soldiers? Rick finally asked. I don't hate anyone, Elia replied. But I've seen what soldiers destroy. Rick didn't flinch. And I've seen what happens when scientists play with things they don't understand. The words hung in the air, like smoke. They didn't look at each other again until the cruiser stopped. They had reached an abandoned underground shelter, hidden deep in the cliffs. Rick had used it during a blackout mission years ago. The place was dark, covered in rust, but still held power. Inside, Elia set up her equipment on an old steel table while Rick checked the exits. Dust floated in the air like memory. I need 2 hours, she said. Maybe 3. We don't have 3, Rick replied. The alien core is moving. I saw it leave Durian. It's heading west. Elia didn't stop working. Then we'll meet it. As she adjusted the sync key, Rick stared at the strange map on her screen. Red lines curved across the Earth's surface. At the center of the pattern was a new pulse, alive, growing, feeding. Suddenly, a noise echoed through the shelter, sharp and metallic. Rick pulled his weapon. Stay behind me." They moved slowly through the hallway. Shadows danced on the walls. Then they saw it. A creature, tall, silent, and made of something between glass and metal, stood near the back door. Its arms were long, its head smooth. It had no eyes, but it turned toward them. Rick fired. The bullets bounced off. The creature raised one arm and the lights flickered. "Back! Now!" Rick shouted. They ran. The creature didn't follow, it just stood there, as if it had delivered a message without speaking. Back in the lab room, Aaliyah looked pale. "That was a scout," she whispered. "It wasn't here to kill. It was watching us." "Like a warning?" Rick asked. "No," she said. "Like a test, to see if we're ready to fight." Rick looked down at the weapon in his hand. It had done nothing, and that scared him more than anything else. Aaliyah worked faster now, her fingers moving with purpose. "This sync key won't last long, maybe 10 minutes of disruption if we're lucky." "That's enough," Rick said. "We just need to get close to the core." She looked up. "You're still willing to fight?" "I'm not fighting for Earth," Rick replied. "I'm fighting because no one else will." Aaliyah smiled faintly. "That's the first thing we agree on." They packed what they could, gear, food, and the key, and left the shelter behind. As they drove through the night, Aaliyah pulled out a small recorder. "What's that?" Rick asked. "My journal," she said. "In case I don't make it." "You will," Rick said. "You don't know that." "I don't need to," he replied. "You're too stubborn to die." For the first time she laughed. The stars above them were fading one by one. The sky had started changing, slower but noticeable. A soft wave of white light moved like fog over the clouds. Aaliyah checked her scanner. "The core is near the Black Ridge Forest. We'll reach it by dawn." "What happens then?" Rick asked. "I don't know," she admitted. "We've never seen a full core up close." "You mean you've seen others?" "Only broken ones," she said. "This one is whole. That means it's the main anchor." "Then we break it," Rick said, eyes focused. They reached a cliff by morning. Below, the forest looked normal. Green trees, soft light. But in the center was something that didn't belong. A black pillar, tall and smooth, humming with power. Around it, the ground pulsed slowly, like it was breathing. Aaliyah stared through her scope. "It's feeding off Earth's magnetic field. That's how it's rewriting everything." Rick stepped out of the vehicle. "We'll go in at night." Aaliyah stopped him. "There's something else." "What?" "The pillar. It's growing." They both stood in silence. The enemy wasn't just invading. It was planting itself inside Earth, becoming part of it. The sun dipped behind the mountains, and the forest slowly turned dark. Rick and Aaliyah stayed hidden near the cliff, watching the strange black pillar in the center of the valley. It stood perfectly still, pulsing softly like a heartbeat. Around it, the trees had begun to rot. The ground beneath it was cracked and glowing faint blue. "This is no machine," Aaliyah whispered. "It's alive." Rick kept his rifle close. "Then we need to kill it." "No," she said. "Not yet. I need to understand it first." They waited until nightfall, then quietly made their way down the hill, moving through the thick trees. Every step closer made the air heavier. The sync key in Aaliyah's pocket began to hum louder. They stopped at a fallen log just 100 meters from the pillar. From this close, They could see thin wires stretching from the pillar into the ground, almost like roots. The earth around it was cracked in a strange spiral pattern. Elia pulled out a scanner and began recording data. Then, the ground vibrated slightly. A soft sound filled the air, like thousands of whispers in reverse. Elia looked at Rick. "It's speaking," she said. "To who? To itself, or maybe to others." She held up her recorder. The sound got stronger. Then it changed. It became a voice. A human voice. Rick froze. Elia's hand shook as she played the recording back. The voice was faint but clear. "Elia, if you're hearing this, I'm already gone," she gasped. That's my voice." Rick narrowed his eyes. "Are you sure?" "Yes, but older, more tired." Rick stared at the pillar. "It's not just rewriting Earth. It's rewriting time." Elia looked pale. "It's bending time to send messages backward. That means it's already won, in the future. And I tried to warn myself." "Then we stop it now," Rick said. Elia checked the sync key. "If I can connect it to the pulse, I might reverse part of the signal. That would stop it from growing." Rick nodded. "Cover me while I plant it." "No," she said quickly. "I have to do it. You cover me." He looked at her. "You sure?" She nodded. "You're better with a weapon. I'm better with tech. Simple." They moved closer, staying low. The whispers grew louder, now echoing through the trees like soft wind. The pillar didn't move. It didn't need to. Elia reached the base and began working fast. She placed the sync key on a glowing root and connected her device. The light turned red. "I need 90 seconds!" she shouted. Rick scanned the area. The forest was still, too still. Then, behind him, something moved. A figure stepped from the shadows, tall, silver, with long arms and no eyes. It wasn't alone. 3 more came behind it. "Stay low!" Rick shouted. He opened fire. Bullets hit the first creature, slowing it down but not stopping it. The others moved faster, spreading out like wolves. Elia kept working, sweat running down her face. The sync key blinked faster. 60 seconds. Rick switched to explosive rounds. He aimed at a tree beside the creatures and fired. The blast shook the ground. 2 of the enemy fell, but the others kept coming. Elia's device began to shake. The red light turned blue. The ground around the pillar cracked more. Then, a loud screech came from the pillar, a high-pitched sound that made Rick cover his ears. The creatures froze, confused. Elia shouted, "It's working! 10 seconds!" The blue light grew brighter. The pillar pulsed wildly. Suddenly, a sharp piece of metal shot from the ground and hit Elia's leg. She cried out and fell. Rick rushed to her, dragging her back. The sync key exploded in light. The creatures stopped moving. The pillar dimmed. The blue glow faded. Silence returned. Elia gasped in pain. Rick quickly tied her leg to stop the bleeding. "It's done," she whispered. Rick looked back at the pillar. It still stood, but it no longer pulsed. The roots had stopped glowing. "We stopped it from growing," she said, "but we didn't destroy it." "Then we hit it harder next time," Rick said. Suddenly, Elia's recorder beeped again. A new voice played. It was Rick's. "If this message reaches you, I failed, but maybe you won't." They both stared at the device. Rick said nothing for a moment. Then he looked up at the stars. "We're running out of time." Elia nodded. "And someone, somewhere, is counting on us." Elia's leg was wrapped in a torn cloth. She winced with every bump as Rick drove the cruiser through the mountain road. The sky above was no longer black. It shimmered with strange silver veins. Whatever was happening, it was speeding up. They had stopped the core in the forest, but the voice from the recorder still echoed in Rick's head. His own voice from the future, warning of failure. That meant more cores were active, and Earth was still in danger. "We need to go to Bastion Base," Elia said, her voice weak but clear. "That place is lost," Rick replied. "No contact in weeks, no signals. It's silent." "All the better," she said. "If it's still offline, it means the aliens haven't fully taken control. Maybe there's still something inside we can use." Rick didn't like it, but he nodded. Bastion Base had once been Earth's strongest command center. Hidden in the northern cliffs, powered by nuclear energy and equipped with advanced tech no one else had. If any hope remained, it would be there. By nightfall, they arrived. Bastion looked dead. The outer walls were blackened, the gate torn open, and smoke floated in the cold air. Rick drove in slowly, weapon ready. Inside the base, silence ruled. Lights flickered weakly in the hallway. Old bloodstains marked the walls. Rick helped Elia walk carefully. "This way," she whispered. "The control room is underground." They reached a sealed door, but Rick forced it open with a power tool from the cruiser. Inside, rows of screens blinked randomly. One large map showed multiple red dots, active cores, still pulsing across the globe. "We were right," Elia said, limping to the console. "The forest was just one. There are at least 6 more." Rick checked the weapons locker. Empty. Everything useful had either been taken or destroyed. Suddenly the screen changed. A security camera flickered on. A face appeared. Rick stepped closer and froze. It was General Kale, Rick's old commander. But something was wrong. His face was pale, skin thin, eyes dull like a puppet. He stood still, blinking slowly, as if his mind wasn't his own. "He's infected," Elia whispered. "They're using him as a puppet." General Kale spoke, but not in his own voice. "You cannot win. Your world has already bent. Your time is undone." Then the screen went black. Rick stared at the screen, fists clenched. "They're using our people, turning them into messengers." Elia opened a locked drawer and pulled out a glowing case. Inside was a crystal core, one of Earth's early defense prototypes. "This can break through their control," she said. "If we link this with my sync key code, we can send a counterpulse." "To the other bases?" Rick asked. "Yes," she nodded. "We might disrupt their entire map." They worked fast. Rick guarded the hallway while Elia reprogrammed the crystal core. Just then, they heard footsteps, slow, heavy. Rick aimed his rifle and peered around the corner. A group of soldiers appeared, but something was off. Their eyes were glowing faint blue. They didn't speak. They just walked straight toward them like machines. "Elia, now!" Rick shouted. "I need 2 more minutes," she cried. Rick opened fire. One soldier dropped, but the others didn't stop. He threw a flash grenade. The light exploded, buying. Hymn time. Elia shouted, "Done!" She slammed the core into the control port. A loud hum filled the base. The walls shook. The screens went white. Outside, the soldiers stopped moving and collapsed like empty shells. The signal had worked, but then the system overloaded. Sparks flew. The console exploded. Rick rushed to Aaliyah. She was on the floor, coughing from the smoke. "We need to go," Rick said. "The reactor's unstable." They ran down the hall, dodging falling panels and fire. Just as they reached the exit tunnel, a loud boom rocked the ground. The base behind them burst into flames. Bastion Base was gone. They stood on the hill, breathing hard, staring at the fire. "I got the data out," Elia said, holding up a small chip. "It uploaded just in time." Rick looked at her with pride. "Then we still have a chance." She smiled weakly. "Let's hope that was enough." In the distance, the sky flashed again. A new line of silver light stretched across the horizon. The key? Battle wasn't over, but for the first time, Earth had struck back. The wind howled as Rick drove the cruiser across the broken plains. Ilia sat beside him, her leg wrapped in bandages, face pale but eyes sharp. Behind them, Bastion Base burned like a fallen star. Ahead, silence waited. "We lost the base," Elia said softly, "but not the war." Rick glanced at her. "You got the data out?" She nodded, holding up the small chip. "All the information about their core network is inside. Energy paths, signal patterns, everything. But we need a powerful system to process it." "There's only one place left," Rick said. "Skyreach Station." Elia's eyes widened. "That orbital facility hasn't been used in years." "Exactly," Rick said. "No one will expect us there, and it still has the last functioning quantum core on Earth." It took them 8 hours to reach the mountain where Skyreach's launch chamber was hidden. The building looked abandoned, half covered in vines and rust. But Rick remembered the access codes. They stepped inside. Lights flickered on. Dust floated in the air. "It still works," Rick muttered. They moved through the halls until they reached the elevator. It took them deep underground, where the launch pod waited, an old dented shuttle with scratched paint but working engines. Rick helped Elia into the co-pilot seat. She adjusted the data chip carefully into the control port. "This ship isn't made for two," she warned. "We'll manage," Rick replied. The shuttle rose slowly, engines humming as they left Earth's surface. Through the window they saw the blue planet below, and the strange silver lines in the sky still spreading. They reached Skyreach Station in 20 minutes. The old structure floated like a ghost in orbit. Once built for science and space observation, now it was forgotten, except by Reich. Inside the station, everything was cold and dark. But when Rick powered up the core chamber, soft light returned. Machines blinked to life. Screens lit up. Elia placed the data chip into the mainframe. Lines of alien code appeared on the display, twisting like snakes. "I can read it now," she whispered. "This is their neural net. It connects all their cores, including the one we stopped." "And can you stop more?" Rick asked. "Not directly," Elia replied. "But we can confuse them, break their sync. It'll make their map useless." She began building a code, part human, part alien, something the network wouldn't understand. As she worked, Rick checked the weapon bay. There were only a few defense turrets still working. He activated them all. Suddenly, alarms rang through. "The station." "They've found us," Elia said, eyes wide. "Something is coming." Rick looked out the window. A small alien ship was approaching. Fast. "Elia, how long do you need?" he asked. 10 minutes. I'll give you 15, Rick said, grabbing his gear. He ran to the outer defense chamber. The station had 3 working turrets. He set them to manual mode. The alien ship fired a bright beam, hitting one turret. The station shook. Rick aimed coy and fired back. His shots hit the enemy's wing, sending it spinning. Then a second ship appeared. Rick kept shooting. His hands moved quickly, heart calm but focused. Inside, Aaliyah continued her work. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, eyes scanning the alien code. She felt sweat run down her neck. The pressure was heavy, but her mind was clear. Outside, Rick took a deep breath. His turret jammed. The enemy ship came closer. He left the station wall and jumped into a side pod, launching himself toward the enemy. He fired a portable EMP missile. It hit the alien ship dead center. The blast lit up space. The ship exploded into 1,000 burning pieces. The second ship turned back. Inside the station, Aaliyah finished the code. "It's done," she whispered. "Now we just need someone to place it in their central core." She turned and saw Rick enter the room, his suit scratched and smoking, but he was alive. "You okay?" she asked. He smiled slightly. "Still breathing." She showed him the small device now holding the new pulse code. "This will stop their network for good," she said. "But someone has to take it right into the heart of the next active core." Rick took the device. "No," she said. "It should be me." "You already saved the planet once," Rick said. "Let me finish what we started." She hesitated. "If you go, you might not come back." He looked at her and said quietly, "If I don't go, no one will come back." They stood in silence for a moment. Finally, Elliot nodded and placed the device in his hand. "I'll guide you from here," she said. "No matter what happens." Rick gave her one last look and turned toward the exit. Outside, the stars were still shining, but time was running out, and one warrior now carried Earth's last hope. The alien core was hidden inside the ruins of an old city once known as Karnas. Now it was just broken stone and glowing cracks. The sky above was silver and trembling, like reality itself was coming apart. Time ran differently here. Hours felt like seconds. Light moved in strange shapes. Rick stood at the edge, holding the device Aaliyah had built, the only thing that could stop the alien network from completing its grip on Earth. It was a small thing, cold metal, quiet, but inside it was hope. He took a deep breath, tightened the straps of his gear, and moved forward. Aaliyah's voice came through his earpiece. "I'm with you, Rick. I'm tracking your signal. The core is 200 meters ahead. Energy readings are rising fast. Be careful." "I've never been careful," Rick said with a small grin. Then he ran. The city ruins were quiet. Too quiet. No birds, no wind, no sound of life. But something was watching. As Rick moved through a crumbled building, a tall shadow stepped out. A scout, taller than any he had seen before. Its body shimmered like glass and metal mixed together. It didn't speak. It didn't need to. It charged. Rick fired first. The bullets sparked off its chest. He threw a shock grenade and rolled behind cover. The blast stunned the creature just long enough for him to run past it. "Core in sight," Aaliyah said. "You're close." Rick jumped over rubble and slid down a broken slope. There, in the center of a ruined plaza, stood the final core. It was massive, taller than any building, black and smooth, pulsing like a heartbeat. Strange symbols floated in the air around it. Time twisted near it. Rick could feel it in his bones. He stepped closer. His vision blurred. The past and future flashed before his eyes. Cities burning, people running, stars falling. "Elia," he said, breathing hard. "I see everything." "You're almost there," she said. "Just a few more steps. You need to place the device at the base, right into the signal point." Rick moved slowly now. The pressure was heavy, like walking through water. His legs felt weak, but he didn't. "Stop." Another scout dropped from above. Rick ducked, swung his rifle like a club, and hit it hard. It fell, but more were coming. The core was calling them. He reached the base. A glowing point opened, like the core knew what he was holding. Rick pushed the device in. The lights changed. The symbols in the air shattered like glass. Suddenly the core screamed, a sound that wasn't a sound. The ground shook. The scouts froze. Then, one by one, they collapsed. In the sky, the silver cracks began to vanish. The planet sighed. "Rick, it's working!" Elia shouted in his ear. "You did it! The network is falling!" Rick smiled, but the light around him grew brighter, too bright. "Elia, the core's overloading." "No," she whispered. "Get out of there. There's no time. You have to try." Rick looked at the stars. He remembered the wars, the people he lost, the silence he lived in for years, and now this. He turned off the comms. Back at Skyreach Station, Elia watched the screens go black. Tears filled her eyes. She called out his name again and again. No answer. Then the earth shook. All over the world, alien cores shut down. The sky turned blue again. The strange energy lines disappeared. People stepped out of their homes. Survivors from hidden bunkers returned to light. The invasion had ended, not with a battle, but with one man's final step. Days passed. Alia stood at the edge of a green hill, the wind blowing gently through her hair. She placed a small stone at the base of a tree. On it, the words, "To Rick Callan, the warrior who gave us back tomorrow." But deep inside, she wasn't sure he was truly gone, because sometimes, late at night, her radio picked up a faint voice. "Still watching the stars, Doc?" She smiled through her tears. "Maybe, just maybe. He made it through time. Maybe some heroes don't die. They become legends."